Hello, everyone. It's a beautiful Boxing Day here in the south of England. It's actually St. Stephen's Day, which is what I'm going to talk about a little. Hello first to everyone who's online here. I'm drawn right away to Anne-Marie, who is in Cardiff. I spent so much time actually in Cardiff, and my grandma and grandpa lived there. My dad went to university there. He was in Dad's army there. And yeah, over the years, I've been back and forth. In fact, I was dedicated to the Lord in Macintosh, which is a Brethren church there. So I have a lot of roots in Cardiff and in Wales. So it's good to have you on the show, on the broadcast this afternoon. Hello, Ella and Helen, and Shea. I'm not sure if I'm saying your name correctly. I'm sorry for brutalizing that. Aaron in Canada, Sandy in Canada. Oh, hello, hello. And Pepper and Sharon and Audrey in Whitstable, just over the road. Really, Anne-Marie says, I know people from Macintosh. Yeah, me too. That was my grandparents' church. That was my daddy's church when he was growing up. And yeah, so we have a lot of connections there with the Brethren. And so it's good to see you on here. Anyway, hi, Irene and Tiffany. So good that you're all here. And I hope you have had a surprising Christmas season. I have. It has been full. It has been incredible in that I have not experienced loneliness for 1 minute, even though I have been by myself. Now, I'm not saying that everyone's supposed to not experience some loneliness. I'll tell you one thing, that loneliness has been a real gift to me in the area of learning to seek God and to open up those places in my life and in my heart to Him to come and fill and to come and satisfy them. And I think that God has really done something in that area for me. And the other thing I've noticed that He's done over this Christmas, or I've just noticed it more this Christmas, is that I've learned over the last year to live every day, not waiting for when this is over, then I will. You know, I have learned to really live in the moment and accept that this is my life right now. And waiting to get out of what this is not helpful for me. And so I found ways to make each moment full. It doesn't mean there aren't choices that I've had to make. I've had to make a lot, especially during sad times. But I've noticed this Christmas that it's actually made a difference. And so I'm thankful to God for that. Really, really thankful. Hello, Kevin. Hello, Maureen. Yeah, all of you. So good to see you. Anyway, today is St. Stephen's Day. Now, if you haven't grown up in the Orthodox Church or the traditional church, you won't know much about that probably. But since Stephen was the first Christian martyr that we ever read about in the Bible, and many churches celebrate St. Stephen's Day, and it's a day when we remember that. So Acts chapter 6 and 7 are important in the Bible because that's where we read about Stephen. And he was an incredible man by all accounts. The Greek Jews came to the leadership and they said, there's people who are really hungry and they're not being taken care of, and the widows have need, and so we need you to do something about this. So what the apostles did was look at the situation and realize that they didn't have what they needed to take care of those things. They knew that their call was to preach the word and to give themselves to prayer. And so they realized that they needed to appoint people to oversee this Isaiah 58 type person who cared for the needy and met practical needs in the family of God. So they chose 7 men, and they had good reputations. They were full of the Spirit of God. The Bible tells us they were full of wisdom. They were full of faith. And so what the apostles did was then lay hands on these guys. Stephen was one of 7, and he's the one probably in charge of them because we read his name first. But what they did was lay hands on them and pray for them, and they commissioned them for this task, for the caring of people. And so Stephen not only just took care of the daily needs of people, but the Bible tells us that he was full of grace and power, and he worked wonders and miracles amongst the people that he worked with. So he wasn't just, mending fences and cooking dinners. They were doing miraculous acts amongst the people that they were sent to. Now, the powers that be in the government of the day did not like this at all, in the church government especially. And so they came against Stephen and they challenged him, but they found that their challenges were no match at all for the spirit in which Stephen spoke and how he answered them, and they could not match his wisdom. He was a man full of wisdom, and I find that really interesting because today we've been hearing again and again how wisdom is one of the biggest gifts that we need to be operating in, and you'll hear people all over the place talking about wisdom today. So these church people and governmental people, they were so angry that they couldn't get a hold of him and trip him up, that they made up stories about him and gave false witnesses brought him to court and provided false witnesses. And while they were busy lying about him, blatant lies in the court, you could see Stephen, and his face just began to glow with the radiance of the presence of God. And the Bible says that he glowed like an angel. And it is so fantastic to read about a person who helps others to have this much capacity for the presence of God, to have this much ability to see through his own sorry state and see something completely different, so much so that his face actually showed the presence of God, the glory of God. And it takes me back to my favorite Bible verse, which is in Psalm 34, verse 5, which says, "Those who look to him are radiant, and their faces are never put to shame." We tend to think about radiance and we associate it with good times. When times are easy, then we'll glow and we'll look happy, but it's not. And here it's clearly not a good time. Stephen is in court, and Stephen is being accused of all sorts of terrible things. He was actually being persecuted for the glory of God, and the glory of God was shining through him. And no matter what was said or done, nothing could stop that. You and I have a lot to learn from this story, especially as prophets who like to think we have all the answers at the right time and we can handle things. Well, this is a lesson in how to live and how to handle things, I believe, for this day and age. Anyway, so you get to the point in the court when the high priest said to Stephen, "Is this really true?" Up to this point, he had just been standing there listening to the charges and glowing. Can you imagine? Just picture it. So they asked him, "Is this really true?" And then that was his moment. And Stephen opened his mouth and he gave this long dissertation about God, how God had been with the children of Israel way back. He started back in Abraham's life and he went all the way through up to that present day. And he said that even though God was obviously with you all along, with the children of Israel all along, people still rebelled against God and they still were disobedient and all that thing. And then he challenged them with the ultimate challenge. And he said, "You are stiff-necked people and you're just like your forefathers, just like your forefathers." And this was the icing on the cake. And they were furious at him. And the Bible tells us right at that moment where they were so angry because he was confronting them with truth, hard truth, but truth nonetheless. He had his eyes fixed on something completely different. And he saw, the Bible tells us, he saw into the heavenly realms. He saw the glory of God, and he saw Jesus at the right hand of the Father. Sorry, that gets me so excited. And then, of course, this enraged them further. And he just was radiant, because no matter what they threw at him, no matter what his circumstance was, he was not looking at it and moaning and complaining and oh, poor me. He was seeing Jesus. He was literally seeing in the spiritual world, and that became his reality. And that's why he glowed. And so they were so angry at this, they blocked their ears. They didn't want to hear any further. They didn't want to see the truth or listen to the truth. And they decided that he should die. And so they stoned him. And at that moment, he cried out, Lord, receive my spirit. And then he said, not forgive them, but he said, don't hold it against them. What they are doing, do not hold it against them. And then he died. And that, my friends, is just a life. If you go back and read Acts chapter 6 and chapter 7, you will find that this was a man who led a godly life, but he played, excuse me, I'm having a hard time talking. He paid the ultimate price with his life. He paid the ultimate price. And I believe that God is saying to us that we need to pay attention to the story of Stephen in these next years, because there is going to come upon the church a greater persecution than we have known. And we are going to learn what it is to serve a God and to pay a cost for serving him. And I'm not talking about, this persecution. Oh, they're not letting us go to church and they're not, that kind of thing. I'm talking about really paying the price, where we have false witnesses rising up against us, where actually there will be some who have to lay down their lives and be like Stephen and say, don't hold it against them, because you will have seen, or people will see into the spiritual realm and know what their reality is. So that is a lot to take in, especially at Christmas time, but it's St. Stephen's Day. And so this is the exact time for us to look about this. So when Stephen when he died, when they stoned him, there began a great period of persecution for the church, against the church in Jerusalem. And you and I need to get ready for that kind of eventuality. Not to put fear in your hearts at all, because God will be with us. Look at that. God is going to open our eyes like he did Stephen's. And that's why you're seeing, I believe, coming into this next decade, the seers are going to come to the forefront, and they're going to lead us and open up things of mystery to us that are actually going to fill our life with a vibrancy and ability to understand the calls and the purposes of God, and to see what's really going on in the spiritual realm, so that we don't become overwhelmed and fearful and concerned that we're actually having to live a life that is not comfortable and not of our liking. So we are also going to have to learn, like Stephen, to wait for our moment and then have an answer, then have a word to give out of our hearts. And it will not necessarily be a popular word. We are known for making Christianity comfortable, especially in the West. We don't like statements that challenge us or poke at us. We react. We do not like it when someone is clear about what God is saying and they draw a line in the sand. We do not like that at all. But we need to get things straightened out in our lives, so that when we are in that place of challenge, that at the right moment, when the door is open for us to speak, that we will not be wishy-washy, and we will give a clear answer for what we are standing in, that we will be able to explain who God is and what he's doing. And we will not worry if people like what we have to say or not, because God will have opened our eyes and we will be seeing. So my daddy used to always tell me, Rebecca, always keep a sermon in your top pocket, because you never know when you're going to be called upon to speak. And so that was one little lesson that I've always taken very seriously from him. And as you know, I don't have that much trouble to talk about a lot of things. And the other thing you can learn from this account on the practical level, which is what I'm talking about now, that's having something ready to say. The other thing is that we need to pay much more attention, I believe, to caring for others. So go into Isaiah 58 and read about the fast that God has chosen, not our fast, but God has chosen, taking care of the widows and the widowers and those that are alone and the orphans and those who are poor and those who are marginalized and those who are looked down on by the rest of society. We can learn this from Stephen's life. He was commissioned along with 7 others. I'm thinking about they called them deacons in those days, and you don't hear a lot about the diaconate anymore in the church. It's we don't like that word. It's old fashioned, and we don't even like the word elders anymore. And so we're going to change it all up, and we're going to have this. And then somehow the very important work that the deacons did is pushed aside. And we even wait to help someone until they ask for it. And yet our job as Christians is to be aware and to be so in tune with what God is wanting, that we are his people at all times, whether it's giving a sermon or whether it's sharing something practically or helping someone. It's always good to phone someone who you know is on their own and say, is there something that you need today? Is there something I can get for you at the shops? Do you have a broken fence? Does your gate work? Does your garden need doing? All of these things. These are practical ways that we can care for those round about us. But more than anything, I think from Stephen's life, I felt like the Lord wanted to say to the prophets, we need to learn to see like Stephen. We need to learn to see, especially when we're consumed with our sorry state. Oh dear, here I am. It's just a hard time to be alone. It's a hard time to be alive. And yes, it is. But if that is all we see, if that is how we are seeing, then our eyes are not open to the spiritual reality round about us. And God is saying, fix your eyes on me. God wants to open up a heavenly realm to you so that you understand what is really going on. He wants to show it to you so that you can live out of that. Remember Stephen, in his last moments, his last hours on earth, all he saw was the heavens opened, and all he saw was God, and all he saw was Jesus at the right hand of the Father. And he lived so well during that last period of his life that he was radiant. And I believe that in this time of difficulty, we need some radiant people, and we need radiant prophets. And so we need people who are seeing, who get their eyes off of themselves and onto God and onto his kingdom and his reality, so much so that it becomes ours. And just like Stephen, then we can say, let's not hold this stuff against them. And we can commit ourselves into the hands of the Lord and live well. So that's it for today. I had some banner I wanted to put up here and I completely forgot. There it is. On the 28th of this month, that's Monday, very few days from here, we're having a community Zoom, and it's at 3:00. I've pinned the Eventbrite registration onto the top of this page on top, and you can register there. It's a free event. We've got 5 fantastic speakers, and we're having a couple of breakout rooms, and it's a celebration all around of the goodness of God, and we're going to hear from prophets in all sorts of areas of life. So I'm excited to meet some of you there, and if you haven't registered yet, please do so, and God bless you all. Happy St. Stephen's Day. Bye-bye.